So the next day, Mama Bear shows up and she is not happy about what happened. Hello everyone and welcome back to Preferably Pre-K. I'm Miss Espinoza and today I'm going to be talking about my first and second year teaching experience because I did not have a typical first year experience, as you will find out. So let's just jump right in. So my teaching journey begins after I finished my student teaching in second grade in North Carolina. That's where I completed all of my teacher education, and I was waiting for the state to approve my certification there so I could come back to Texas and apply for my Texas certification. So since I wasn't certified, I began researching teaching jobs that did not require certifications, and that's how I stumbled into the preschool career path. Now, I did not have any experience teaching this age group, and I did not need to be certified to be teaching this age group, and so that's how I landed my first job as a Headstart teacher. So as a Headstart teacher, the organization that I worked for had a collaboration with a school in the district. This school was an early childhood center, which I didn't even know my school district had early childhood centers, but I'm so glad that I discovered them. And another unique aspect was that this early childhood center implemented a dual language program. So I was actually in the Spanish speaking classroom with my co-teacher, and the classroom next door to us was the English instruction classroom. So our 17 students received only Spanish instruction, and towards the middle of the day, we would switch with the group next door and their students would come to us, and again, we would continue Spanish instruction for the day, and then our kids that started off with us would receive English instruction for the day. And these kids were pre-K 3, which meant that they were 3 years old on the first day of school. We were not given specific guidelines on what a collaboration should look like. And my co-teacher was actually a veteran teacher, and she was really great, and I learned a lot from her. Since I had not worked with this age group, I know I was terrified to actually teach. And so for the most part, my co-teacher did do most of the instruction. And we also followed their lesson plan. So that was a really big element that I missed out on my first year, was actually doing lesson plans and curriculum. So in a way, it honestly felt like student teaching again. But in retrospect, it's okay because again, I learned a lot. I learned how to work with this age group. And most importantly, I was there to just see the start of the school year, which is what I missed out on when I did my student teaching, since my student teaching was in the spring. So I didn't get to see just the beginning of a classroom and what it means to have procedures and routines. My duties as a Headstart teacher were not complicated. I had monthly documentation on all 17 of my students, and my documentation was aligned with the Texas pre-K guidelines. So I documented every student in each of the 10 different domains. But again, it was rather simple. For example, if it was the math domain and I noticed that the student could count to 12, and then the next month I noticed that they can count to 31. That is what I would write down for their math for the month. One aspect of being a Headstart teacher that's very different from other preschool teaching, I think, are the home visits. And home visits are essentially parent-teacher conferences, but if the parent is comfortable, we go to their homes to conduct them. So in my experience, I think it was really neat because the kids are shocked whenever you go into their home and they see their teacher visiting. And I think it created a better bond between myself and some of the students whose home I was able to visit. And for the home visits, we did go with another Headstart teacher. We did not go alone. So this was one of my bigger responsibilities, and I do remember being very, very nervous leading up to my first set of home visits and parent conferences. So what I found that really worked for me was creating an agenda of just talking points. And my talking points were really just covering letting parents know what skills we were going to work on for the year, and just talk about how their child was doing up to that point, socially and emotionally in the classroom, and what things they could work on at home. And now I just want to share what I feel like was one of my highlights of that year. and it involved a little girl who was an only child. And I noticed that she was incredibly shy. So for the first couple of months of school, she was not talking with the other kids or talking to us, the teachers. And another thing that I noticed about this little girl was that she was not eating during lunchtime. So when it finally came time to do the parent-teacher conference with the mom, I did let her know about those two things, that she was not talking and that she was not really eating. So I think just the little girl being present in that conversation with the mom and us trying to figure out how we can help her and trying to come up with solutions. We came to agreement that since I spend lunchtime with the kids, that I would try to encourage the little girl to try new foods. And that's what I did. So slowly, just every day, I encouraged her to try something new on her tray. And by the end of the school year, she was eating school lunch, and the mom was really grateful because she was an incredibly picky eater. But by the end of the year, she was eating a lot more than macaroni and cheese. So that's just a happy highlight for me, that I was able to help this little girl not be a picky eater. And she did start talking like a couple weeks after my conference with the mom. She started getting more comfortable. And that was the year that I learned about selective mutism, because that actually did not just happen with that little girl. We also had a little boy who did not talk all school year. We literally did not hear his voice until the last day of school. And that's just because we invited parents to the end of the year party and we happened to hear him talk with his mom. And I swear everybody in the classroom stopped and we were just looking at him, and even the kids were like, oh, he talked. But selective mutism is when a person is able to talk, they are able to communicate, but they are just choosing not to. And now that I shared my highlight, I will share what was the most unnerving parent interaction that I've had. So this happened probably a couple months into the school year. The kids are cleaning up their centers, and as they're cleaning up, they go to the carpet. So I'm helping the kids clean up and keeping an eye on the carpet. And I noticed that one of our most rambunctious little boys is like just playing on the carpet, and he starts rubbing his head on the carpet. And when he lifts up his head, he has a really obvious rug burn on his forehead, but it looks really ugly and nasty. It looks like a bruise. It does not look like a rug burn. So that was categorized as a physical injury during school time. So I was required to file an incident report that just details what happened, what time it happened, if I notified parents. So I filled that out, called parents, let them know, hey, your son was playing around in the carpet and he gave himself a really bad rug burn on his forehead. Now they were calm over the phone, and they said, okay, well, we'll just see how it looks like after school. So after school time comes and the father picks him up, and the father is totally calm because he understands. He knows his son, he knows he's rambunctious. So I give him the incident report and I ask him, read it over and bring it back signed tomorrow, please. So the next day, Mama Bear shows up and she is not happy about what happened. And I don't know why the front office decided to call me to deal with the mom and not my co-teacher, but I went and talked to the mom. And by talk, I mean just stood there and let her yell at me for a few minutes. She was just upset that it happened, and I didn't know what to tell her. I explained all of the situation to her and that it was self-inflicted, that I'm sorry, but I mean, it is what it is. But she did cool down and eventually left and signed the paper. That was incredibly unpleasant. But I just wanted to share my Headstart experience very briefly, just to give you an idea of the experience that I gained that year. And I did receive my North Carolina certification, so I started the certification process in Texas. So by the end of the school year, I was ready to, I was already applying to jobs, and I actually only applied to pre-K jobs because I love pre-K so much. Now, I was horrible at interviewing, but I think I ended up where I needed to be, which is actually my own elementary alma mater, the school that I went to from kinder to 5th grade. and it's in the neighborhood that I grew up in, so it just felt really awesome whenever I got the phone call from the principal, and I totally cried. I still remember. So once I got a district job, I was super excited because it was going to be a true first year with my own classroom. My school district does have a week called New Teacher Academy, where newly hired teachers attend a full week of like professional development and training that supports new teachers. Now, I do remember that 2 of those days were kind of like generic trainings, like how to access grades, like where do you go to turn in grades and attendance, how do you access your email, how do you access this and that, and just all the different kinds of resources that my district offers. So the rest of the 3 days were grade level or content specific trainings, and my district has an early childhood department, which is super awesome. So being a pre-K teacher, all pre-K teachers attended 3 days of training with the early childhood department, and it was really great because they actually created a pre-K 101 guide, which is what we covered through those 3 days, and it just walked you through how to teach pre-K really. And I actually wish I could share the guide with you guys, but I did see that it's a resource just for our district teachers that we are not allowed to share. But it walked us through how do you arrange your room, what things do you need to keep in mind when you're arranging a pre-K room. And we are recommended to have 10 centers in our pre-K classrooms. So as we were going through this training, and since I already had a lot of background knowledge and was in an early childhood classroom, I was trying to decide what my 10 centers would be. But aside from like room arrangement, what you need to do to get ready before the first day of school, what do you need to get ready for meet and greet, how you slowly start introducing centers to your kids, how morning message should look, how your math center should look. It was just very thorough on, again, what a pre-K classroom should look like, how it should run. So all of that was covered in 3 days, and then that week finished. I think we had like a week, one more week off, and then teacher service days started, and teachers go in 2 weeks before students. So when I finally got to my campus, I was super excited to meet everybody, and I remember just feeling super happy. I met my pre-K team and just all of my campus team, and I remember the assistant principal, coming up with really fun bonding games. One thing that I was not aware of though when I got to my campus finally was that my school had a Headstart teacher collaboration. So that meant I was gonna have a Headstart co-teacher. So since I had been in those shoes already, I knew what I wanted my Headstart teacher relationship to be. We are a team and we are on the same page, and all of the Headstart co-teachers that I've had, I've learned from. All of my Headstart teachers have been fabulous. I've gotten along with all of them. I still keep in touch, or try to keep in touch with them. So when I finally got into my classroom, I felt really prepared, and thank you to my sister because she helped me set up my classroom. And when we got there, I was really happy about how big the classroom was. And we spent a week just cleaning out the classroom. So trying to sort through the material that was left behind and trying to see what I could use and what needed to be trashed, and then just really disinfecting everything because I'm a clean freak, so I wanted to wipe down everything. And when we were organizing my classroom, one thing that I liked and I learned from my co-teacher the previous year was to keep furniture to a minimum. And the main reason is just so that you don't have blind spots in your classroom. For safety reasons, you want to be able to see your kids at all times. So I have very minimal furniture, and I also just don't like too much furniture because it gives the classroom a cluttered look, in my opinion. And that year, I placed my library very awkwardly in the middle of my classroom. So once my classroom was arranged, I could begin focusing on meet and greet. 3 things that I always like to have ready for meet and greet are a student survey where I ask parents just very basic questions. like what languages they speak at home, because I do teach in a very multicultural community, an immigrant community. So a lot of my kids are English language learners. I also ask if they have any siblings in school in case I need help translating. I do ask siblings sometimes to help translate or to help get information from parents. I also ask if they have any fears or weaknesses, if they have any allergies, what they're looking forward to, just questions like that. So it gives me a better idea of that child. Another thing that I have ready are pickup cards, and it's literally just half a sheet of paper where I put the student name, what grade they're in, and then my teacher name. And it helps at dismissal time. It's a lot of new faces the first couple of weeks of school, and not just your kids, but also a lot of parent faces. So it does get really hectic for us at dismissal time. So we came up with that card solution, so parents just hold it up and we can see, okay, Zakia's dad is over there, let me walk her over there. And it also helps whenever parents are unable to pick up their child and they just have to have somebody else pick them up if they have that card, because sometimes they don't even know what grade they're in or what teacher, so that helps as well. And the third thing that I have ready is my school supply list, which I don't ask kids for very much. I just the bare minimum, like literally crayons, glue, scissors, and like a little pouch or a little pencil box so they can keep. And I sort that out for everybody. I make sure that everybody does have the materials. And when I'm ready to start folders, homework folders, I give them their homework folder and their little pouch or their little pencil box with materials. And I explain to them, you keep this at home from now on, and these are your materials to do homework. Now, as a first year teacher, I did get assigned a mentor, and I was lucky because the veteran teacher that was my mentor, it was actually her last year teaching. So I got a lot of great tips from her. And anytime I needed help, I would not hesitate to ask her. She was really helpful, and not just her, but just my whole pre-K team was super awesome my first year. Very supportive. So I do feel like I just had a very lucky first year of teaching in my own classroom as well. So once school started, I did feel at ease with the routines that I came up with because of my past experience with Head Start and just how thorough the early childhood department did in explaining the Pre-K 101 guide. So I felt super ready, and again, I had a Head Start co-teacher, so I had a lot of support. There was definitely some things that I needed to figure out on my own, like what kind of morning routine I wanted. So I do want to share my routine because, again, I do teach English language learners, and my routine has worked really well for my students. So I do plan to share my literacy routine at some point in the future with you guys. My biggest mess up though, that first year in my own classroom, happened during our first field trip, which was in November, I remember. We went to Disney on Ice, so of course lots of children and parents there. And whenever the show finished, I was sitting on one end of the aisle and my co-teacher was sitting at the opposite end. Now, this was total miscommunication. I thought she was gonna wait for all of the crowd to leave so that we wouldn't get mixed up with them. But she stood up whenever the show was over and started walking up. I was in the back trying to like wave her down, but she didn't see me. So the kids start walking, following my co-teacher, and I'm in the back just trying to make sure that everyone is following her. But sure enough, it was really tricky because there was a lot of people. So once we finally made it to the top of the stairs, we kind of got in a little corner and we counted all of our kids, and that's when we realized that we did not know where 4 of them were. Now, we stayed really calm because, again, it was a children's event, so there was a lot of police officers there. So my kids started crying, and a police officer did spot them, and they called the number on their little badges, and Mrs. Espinoza put the school phone number on the badges, not her own personal number. So whenever they called the school, they have no idea what's going on. They just get a call saying that they have 4 missing children. So the school calls our pre-K lead teacher, and she finds me, and she starts asking, what's going on? The school said you lost 4 of your kids. And by that point, my co-teacher had walked off to try and go find them. So again, like, it all happened very quickly and it was okay. My co-teacher came back a couple minutes later, with the kids, and we talked it out with the pre-K lead teacher. And later that day, I did get an email from my principal saying she wanted to talk about the incident, but I think she was just too busy and we never talked about it. But I absolutely learned my lesson when it came to field trips. So now I make sure that their badges have my phone number on them. And I also bought them yellow bandanas that I tie around their neck just so that my kids are easy to spot. Your first year is a lot of trial and error. You're gonna try things and they might work or they might not work, but it's part of the process and it's okay. You're going to figure out what works best for you and your kids. But I think the biggest component is going to be how well you manage your time. So stay organized. Stay organized as much as possible. I am naturally a very organized person. Every school year that I start, I always like to write down important dates, like when holidays, professional development days, early release days, testing, when grades are due, just all the different deadlines that we have. Just write down all of the different deadlines that you have so you do not get caught off guard. And when I think back to my first year, I think back to lesson plans, and I printed, laminated, and cut so much material. I swear if I had footage of how much I printed, cut, and laminated, it'd be like 93 hours of footage. So lesson planning is going to be time consuming, but hopefully you'll have a supportive team. And just remember that we have access, that we're lucky to be living in an age where we have technology and we have things like Pinterest and Teachers Pay Teachers. Those are like my go-to. And now that I started my channel, I did create an Instagram page, preferably pre-K, where I follow just pre-K kinder teachers. And it's really great to just keep getting ideas, because you can learn so much from other educators and what they're doing in their classroom. That's where I get a lot of my ideas and resources from. Every year is just a new learning experience, because we as teachers are lifelong learners as well. But I think that kind of wraps it up, you guys. So if you are getting ready for your first year of teaching, good luck, you got this. Everybody has to start somewhere. Don't compare yourself to other teachers, instead learn from them. I hope that this video was helpful. Please subscribe and stay tuned for my next video, where I will break down 10 teacher tips for new pre-K teachers. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.